you're a pet retail store owner and you're constantly losing product to closeout sales and damaged product and expired product, this video is for you. I'm Tiff Braxton from the Modern Pet Retailer. This week's roundtable discussion, we talked about how to build inventory with intention, evaluating products and understanding the relationships you'll have with these manufacturers. So if you feel these pain points, this video is for you and stay tuned. Welcome to the Modern Pet Retailer, where independent pet retailers come together to solve problems within our pet retail businesses. Last week, we talked about how to implement an inventory freeze so you could start to reset your inventory. And we discussed how you could pull data from your POS to evaluate so you know what needs to stay and what needs to go. Now that we've covered all of that, we need to talk about how to properly build inventory with intention by developing SOPs around buying and just not adding products for the sake of adding products, but adding products with intention. Dave, when you go to other stores, what do you see that they're getting wrong when it comes to purchasing products?
Well, I think it might be what I would call incongruent or obviously excess inventory. I think a lot of product stacked on shelves that appears to me from an outsider perspective to be more than they need for their typical cycle time. For instance, we order once a week in most cases. We can typically carry between 2 and 3, maybe up to 4 weeks worth of inventory, lower on the faster moving products because there's less likelihood of going out, and a little bit more on products that are ones and twos that we want to have for the customer, but we just have to keep on the shelf. So excess inventory is one thing, but also incongruent inventory, meaning your customers tell you over time what they want to buy from you. And sometimes it looks like products that might not really be related or part of the focus of what that business of, again, peers from the outside. Like for instance, we focus on high quality products that for foods and maybe supplements that might be a little bit of a high education, but also products that are just easy for our customers to understand. They fit our niche, dog treats and cat products that cat owners just going to understand. And we know that because the products sell here and we can track that because of sales. So that's mostly what I see is maybe a mishmash of different types of products that don't seem to be congruent within the store. That's probably one of the bigger problems I would see.
Do you think that might be because pet stores don't understand which pet parent to target or which one their ideal customer is?
Yeah. So in marketing, they call an avatar. An avatar is just a really good view of who you're speaking with. And the more refined and more accurate you can get, the better you are at understanding them, to your point. And in marketing, it is, of course, attracting them. So I would agree they either, one thing I hear a lot in the marketing side of things would be, I want to talk to everybody. And the problem is if you try to talk to everybody, you really end up talking to nobody because no one feels like you hear them or understand them. So the same is true with the customer themselves inside the store is if you want to serve every single customer, you actually become just a warehouse of stuff and you no longer really have an identity. So the closer you get to identifying your best customers, those ones that come in regularly, those ones that enjoy shopping at your store and understand the value that you offer, those are the customers that you want to really focus your product lineups. And then you can easily focus your marketing to them too. For our customers, we're very fortunate to live in the area we live in. We have a long established business. So we have a really good history with our customers. It also means we've gotten to know them a lot better. There are some that are value buyers, but the majority of our customers want to get quality products and they want to take care of their pets' health, their skin and coat, just the various aspects of taking care of a pet. They want good products. So they trust us to pick out the good products. That helps us. So as we identify with who our customer is, mostly well-educated, well-intentioned, capable buyers, they come in, they're looking to us for guidance and instruction. And what we we do there is we try to add value back to them. We select products that we understand that they are going to want, what's going to fit their needs, what's going to fit the benefit of their pet. And if we can fill the shelves with those types of products, we see through data, see through the sales. If we make a mistake, it lags on the shelf and just doesn't sell. If we pick the right products, we notice that the repeat buyers are there. So yeah, look at it as a marketing aspect. Try to build a congruent avatar, which is simply a representation of your maybe 10 or 15 or 20 ideal customers. Is it a man or a woman? Okay, it's okay if it's both. What's the general age range? What's the general demographic features of who they are? What's their level of affluence and capability of purchasing? When they come in the store, what's their level of interaction? Are they asking good questions? What's their level of interest? Do they just want discount and value, or are they looking for education and really quality products? So understanding who they are in your region and who you want to attract really goes a long way in understanding the customer and then understanding the types of products that would suit them best.
If you were to describe, because I think a lot of people have, oh, who are my best customers are the ones that just spend the most money and all that. If you were to describe the best customer, how would you kind of identify that person?
It just keeps going back to the information and data, right? So you're right. Many people look at best customer just dollars and cents. And I think that's the wrong way to look at it, because the best customer is one that you can cultivate a good relationship over time. If you sell something for $100 and you sell it to them once, 40% margin, you made $40. And if you build a relationship with the customer that lasts, let's say, a dog or a cat's lifetime, and that could be 10 or 15 or even 20 years for some cats, and they spend less, maybe you only make $20, but you make that every single month, month over month, over a lifetime. It's so important to build the relationship and to understand what the customer wants. So we want to look for people that understand us, understand the value that we offer in the industry, and are satisfied and happy even to come into the store to pay us the way that we're pricing our product lines and everything, and service them with our customer service, with our employees, with the way we're training. So we're building this whole ecosystem really around delivering products and services to the best customer. And the best customer is one that we can cultivate a relationship that lasts as long as it lasts. There's always natural attrition. People are moving out of the area. People's pets are dying. So we want to do such a good job at cultivating that relationship that they actually become healthy referrers, right? Somebody who's going to run into a friend and say, "Oh, I got a brand new cat. Oh, you really got to go to the store down the street. They do an excellent job." That is the type of business, I think. Focusing on those customers, I always feel like they're the best customers. The ones who are coming in, the ones you can have a conversation with, the ones that rely on you for picking good products, for answering their questions. Those are who I would consider the best customers over time.
Yeah, somebody who's happy to pay you. Not like, can you give me a coupon? You got a discount, anything like that. So happy to pay. So I feel like it's very important to define your store. You defined your customer base, the people you really want to serve. So now you have to kind of backtrack and tailor what type of store you're going to be based on that information. And we kind of dictated there's like 4 categories within this industry, and there's probably more, but 4 that we've kind of decided that this is kind of where most people fall. So you have the high end education based stores. Those stores usually require heavy staffing, good employee retention and training, and just a lot of customer service and customer handholding, just walking them through all the different types of products you carry. Those types of stores usually work well in affluent areas, maybe like where we're on the main line outside of Philadelphia. So a lot of traffic, but I don't think a store like that could work out in the middle of nowhere where most of your customer base is going to be farm and feed type people or somebody that just uses their animals for service and might not want to buy the most premium bags of food that need that education level. And then you have your value discount stores, which are structured completely around customer dollar savings. And the number one priority is high margin, low cost options, foods, toys, treats. And then you have to kind of build your purchasing around that model. You can't try to be a high end store, but also be a value discount store at the same time because those things just naturally don't go together usually. And then you have a multi store melting pot. These are your family stores that are multi chain, maybe one or two stores, but they're usually a melting pot of products. So sometimes you can go into one and you'll see a product mix that matches a different store, but the demographic of this one's a little different because it's in a country town and this one's in a more of a suburban town. But you buy multiples for multiple stores that have those different demographics. So you have a melting pot in each store of kind of what works and what doesn't work. And then you have your farm and feed, which definitely is stronger out in those rural areas. But you have a very diverse product mix. You have farm type food equipment, stuff like that. And then you have your pet equipment. And then you can have even like wild bird seed and stuff like that. But it's a very diverse customer base. So I think when you mentioned building those avatars, customer avatars, the farm and feed have it probably the most difficult because they have to target the farmer that has horses, the farmer that has small animals, and then the pet owner themselves, and then the wild bird watcher. There's so many different types of customers as opposed to just a dog and a cat owner type thing with the more niche stores. So I think it's very important that you have to define your store before you let your inventory define you.
Yeah, I like the idea of what you said there, the inventory defining you. And what do they say, right? That's the tail wagging the dog. And maybe to some degree, if that's who you've been and it works for you, that may be okay because that kind of looks like you've got a set of customers coming in the store and well, hopefully you're following them, right? So the customers are driving that you didn't decide. You just kind of happen to be in an area, you found out who was shopping, you supply them. That's totally fine. You might want to change that. Maybe to your point of farm and feed that's rural, maybe it's becoming a suburban area and you might have to split your focus. I think it's okay to have multiple avatars, but it's critical to be absolutely clear in who you're serving in what part of your store. So an example would be just that. If you have a farm and feed that has started to grow into a suburban store, so now you have horses or large animals that are being fed pallets at a time. And you have a few developments that come around where your normal suburban household, where it's a dog or a cat in the house. Or in our case, we do that. Our cat avatar is actually different than our dog avatar. They are actually mostly different customers. Cat people shop differently than dog people. We have to understand what's the value proposition, what is the best opportunity for our cat owners that is different from our dog owners. We also have wild bird. We don't really do farm and feed, but I would say that we probably have three solid avatars. And fortunately, the store is still cohesive and we have some cross purchasers, right? We have some dog owners who have cats and they buy their dog and their cat products here. We have some cat owners that like to feed birds and they buy cat products and wild bird stuff. So it's still cohesive. Sometimes we just have wild bird people. They literally just come in the store to buy a feeder and a bag of seed. And that's their regular purchase. So that's specifically a bird avatar, a bird customer, but it's that simple. So you might find that you do have multiple avatars, but you want to be distinct in your offering because they oftentimes shop differently. So in our case with dog, cat, wild bird, it's a suburban household. So it's a very high overlap of the avatar. The demographic is similar. The family makeup is close with maybe some subtle differences. The age of the buyer is close, but maybe with some subtle differences. When you have farm and feed and you have suburban buyer, they are absolutely distinct. Farm and feed might feed dogs, but it's highly unlikely that they're feeding the same foods as your suburban domestic household pet. So the setup of your store, the layout of your store, the way that you deliver the information and the way that you deliver the service and products, knowing who you are and knowing who your customer are and coming to a happy agreement as to how you can best serve them is really, really important. It's just going to help you grow your business within each of those categories. What I wouldn't do is let the reps drive your store. If the reps drive your store, they have their own agenda. No matter how long you've dealt with them, no matter how long, you've been close with them, they still have their own agenda. They go home at night, they have their family to feed, and it's an important job for them. And it's important for us to cultivate that relationship. But we also have to control that relationship. At the end of the day, within our four walls of our own store, our primary obligation is to serve our customers, which means we have to understand who they are and what they want. The rep's main obligation is to take care of their family and the business that they work for. And again, we hope that there's a large overlap, especially with the best reps that are coming in. They understand our customers, they understand our store, they understand our interests and desires and the way we want to build and grow. And then they do the best to offer the products that their distributor happens to have to support our customers and to support our journey. So, but I would always be cautious that it's more important for us to know our business, the direction that we want to go, the direction that we want to grow, um, understand our customers and those repeat buyers who we've developed the relationship with. And it's important to understand our service is to them primarily. And if we do that right, they're going to uh, return the favor and be loyal customers shopping with us.
Yeah, definitely. So now that we've discovered kind of who we want to serve, or we've thought about this and gave it some mental space, and now we're talking about what kind of store we want to build around that customer, we want to talk about how to choose these products. So for our philosophy is we usually evaluate the companies harder than we evaluate the products themselves, because we're coming in, if a rep is bringing us a product, we come with the notion that they're bringing us with a good intention of this is at least a good quality product and it meets the low threshold of all the check boxes, whether it's quality, price point, durability, or any of those little nuanced things. So that all should check out. It's mainly, did they do due diligence on the company itself? And does it have some of the key metrics that we look for with companies? So when you interview a product line or a company that wants to come into Braxton's, what different questions do you ask them before you bring them in?
Before I kind of dive into that, I'd have to caveat that there are sort of different levels of importance where foods reach the highest level of importance because we take so seriously bringing a food on for some of those reasons that you said. Like we want to carry just quality. So if that's satisfied, then we really want to do due diligence on the company. It's different if it's a treat because while we want to carry quality product, including treats and consumables and toys, we don't want garbage in the store throughout the product lineup. Those types of decisions that customers make are usually much more flexible, let's say. So if we have a toy line one year and we don't have a toy line, that same toy line the next year, customer might come back in looking for it, but they're pretty forgiving if we have something similar or better that satisfies their pet's interest. Same tends to go with treats is they get hooked on one type of treat, but you can't carry that the next year. Again, there's some flexibility. Food, however, families get anchored on a food and they really, really become brand loyal. So with the business interviewing, we go most in depth with foods. It doesn't mean we ignore the businesses behind the other product lines. It simply means that we're just not as concerned. We're not as serious. But when you decide to bring on a food, in our case, we want to know if we take the time to build a brand inside our four walls, if we take the time to recommend a food to our customers, that we want to have a very healthy runway, a lifeline. How long is this brand going to be the brand that we've chosen to take on? So part of the interview, and a lot of reps, they've gotten accustomed to our style, but a lot of reps are kind of surprised when we start this, is we ask who owns the company, right? And it's a little bit odd because they want to come in about margin and they want to talk about the quick features and benefits, like, oh, it's sustainable or it's organic and these sort of buzzwords, and you get a margin that's better than most of your other margins. And we're like, oh, hang on a second. I think assuming everything else is true, that it's a good product and it fits the model that our customers might be looking for, we really want to know what's the origin story of the company? Why did the ownership choose to develop this company in the first place? How long has it been operating? Has there been outside money introduced where maybe a privately developed food company grew up for 20 years and they needed some liquidation to maybe a divorce or maybe a retirement, and they needed some liquidation. So they took outside money. Well, outside money has a very specific interest, and that is to grow it. And there are some private equity firms that are buy and hold for many, many years. And there's other private equity firms that are looking for a 5-year turnaround. They literally want to grow it as fast as they can. They want to streamline the processes so they're more profitable. And then they're just going to flip it. And when we start to dig into who the company is, why they built the company, what's the ownership structure look like, it actually tells us quite a bit about what we should expect for how long the food will remain the food we're looking at today. The marketing structure, how they're doing that, the food ingredients, how they're making their food, their intent to go into mass market, large independent pet or not independent. They're selling to us independent pet, but are they going into Petco, PetSmart, which we're actually okay with. But if they're selling themselves as independent pet and intend to grow, we would then understand that there's an expectation in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, that they're going to get to the point that they're going to be in Chewy, they're going to be in Amazon, they're going to be in PetSmart, they're going to be in Petco. Some of them are going to go to Tractor Supply. Some of them are going to go to grocery. So the way that we interview the companies, the reps about the companies, simply gives us an understanding. Hey, if you're going to flip this in 5 years, probably not a food for us. If it looks like you literally are just building this food because it's marketable buzzwords, and you're ultimately going to grow it to a point where someone will be interested in it, a Mars or a Procter and Gamble or whoever, you're probably not for us. And we make those decisions not lightly at all, because sometimes we'll see those brands have some visibility in the market. Maybe a customer or two is asking for it. We can always bring it in specifically for them, but it's probably not going to earn shelf space. And we're probably not going to ever push it for a growth trajectory. So we often overlook, and again, this is the baseline with what you started off at. There's an assumption that if you bring the product in and we look at the ingredient panel, that there's a certain fit, that it's going to be a baseline of quality that we would be willing to bring in and shell. But as we dig in, there are certain aspects of the company structure that might actually have us choose to not bring it in. So it's really, really important for us. And then that can bleed over into certain toys. That's more like a benefit when you look at toys or treats, like, oh, okay, this is a good product and we like the company, but it's just less important than it is with long-term products like food that we really have to trust who we're trying to build and grow.
Yeah. And I know two additional, probably the last couple questions we ask that you haven't mentioned just yet is kind of what the immediate goals are for the company. Because if you have a food company and they say they're going to add 200 new SKUs in the next year, like there's just certain red flags that you're like, all right, they're building this for immediate growth. We know they have outside investors. They're probably going to have to offload something at some point. So, like, just little nuanced things, understanding a company's goals in the immediate future and maybe like a 5-year plan can kind of help allude a little bit to what their plan is as a company. And then the final question, I think this has come up more since I've been here in the last 5 years, is what's their marketing strategy and what concepts are they investing in? I think in the digital age that we live in with social media marketing, things like TikTok, all these shop type, video type platforms, it's huge that it's low cost to reach a customer if you can find the right way to reach them and to get them into our store. What I understood before I was here was it was very much in the independent space that you took on a brand and you grew it for the brand, and that was the marketing strategy. They will fill you with product, and basically you will just talk about the product with people that were already walking through your doors. So I think now that we can literally target so specifically people and get those costs for marketing down and figure that little algorithm out, I wanna know, are companies investing in those platforms or SEO for Google, just any kind of online marketing, because I want people to bring other customers through my doors, not the ones that I already have coming in, because I've already earned that customer some other way, basically. So that is a huge question that I like to ask people. And for some reason, it's still like depending on the brand, very scary for some people. And it is a very confusing world to like navigate and understand between the different platforms, you have the different targeting options. But to me, if a company's not at least doing something online, they're probably not going to make it through the doors either because it's just so difficult to either cannibalize from a different brand and then come out even on the same day versus somebody just walking through my door and say, hey, I heard you're carrying this brand. I'm really interested in it because that company did due diligence and targeted that customer for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think some of the insights that I would take from the angle that you're talking about is historically pre-social media, the brands, you're right, they depended on influencers. Influencers were the store staff. Customer comes into the store, you sell them a product because you've chosen to sell the product. And there's kind of two avenues there. Do you have a house brand that you love and trust, and you have a relationship with that company, and therefore you build that brand? And you probably choose one or two, a very small sort of set for a very specific reason that you and your staff just happily sell it. It could be profit motive, it could be product motive, doesn't really matter. But you live and die by those brands over time, and that's the way it works. Maybe if you're lucky, you get a demo rep come in, maybe they do a few dollars to throw at you, like, oh, it used to be like swap a bag program. I'll bring in X brand and we'll give you a bag of ours, even if the bag's empty. Go to the grocery store, buy a bag of Purina dog chow, bring it into our store, and we're going to give you a free 8-pound bag of our preferred food. Spiff programs, sell a certain amount, get some money back at the store. So these are sort of like the old school common methods for a manufacturer to grow their brand in your store. But exactly to your point is we already presumably had those customers. They already walked through our door. They were loyal to us for whatever reason or convenient or whatever reason they choose to come through our door. They're in our store. Then it became the store's job to guide the decision, and especially food, because we're talking about one of the major decisions that they make, into whatever brand you choose. The world is way different now. It's faster, and many brands are taking shortcuts to growth by outside money, and then they expand their offerings in SKU counts and they expand their footprint by going to different avenues. And then we get upset because, like, oh, this was my loyal brand, and the owners retired and sold their company. Like, oh, I thought that's why they were in business, to grow their company. But I'm not saying that loyalty is dead, and far from it. You still have to respect and trust the companies that you're dealing with, but we also need them to do their job. And their job is to deliver to the customers information about their products, and then hopefully cultivate an interest that drives them into our store for inquiry to say, hey, I saw this product online. Do you carry it? All of the other requirements count. It still has to be a good quality, it still has to be a good company. So creating that alignment, this new world in our mind is, if you're a rep bringing me a product and it fits what we believe our model for our store, our philosophy, our minimum requirements for quality, the correct price point, we believe our customers are going to like it or would choose it if it was something they needed. How are you driving the customers? You have to instruct, you have to teach, you have to educate, you have to reach out. There are a few brands that we've seen that have just done this incredibly well. I'll use the name Open Farm, right? Open Farm, quality products, interesting story, interesting engagement. They have really done an excellent job engaging with the customer in the customer's territory, social media. They've understood what the customer wants. They've educated the customer how Open Farm fits that. And then the customers are searching for that product. It became very easy for us, but it was actually higher than the pricing point that we would have preferred. So we were a little resistant at first because it was one of the higher price points in our store. So it was a stretch for us to take that on. But it was also very clear that they were doing an excellent job educating and reaching out to the customers themselves through various means. The funny thing that happens then is the legacy companies don't. They're still stuck in the old model. They want you to sell their food, and they do very little outreach, very little customer education. Their customer education is a demo. Hey, let us come into your store and educate your customers about our product. Okay, well, they used to buy X, now they buy Y. Is overall, if the foods are not that dramatically different, what's the total benefit? I actually look like I'm a little wishy-washy because I used to recommend X and now I'm recommending Y. Like, that's not necessarily an incredible value for my customer unless there's a really compelling reason for the change. But if you go out into the world and you teach the customers about your product, so much so that they have an interest in it and they come into the store, whether they were an existing customer of mine or a new customer, and they're driven to buy your product because you've already educated them. That is so, so incredible. And you take that Open Farm as an example, many reps from legacy brands, they actually, they don't disparage Open Farm. They simply write it off by saying, oh, well, Open Farm has an incredible budget for social media. Like, well, if you grew your brand the way that they do, you would have that budget too. And Tiff, to your point is like, if you're focused and you learn how to do it properly, it's actually can be more economical than most of your traditional advertising. You're certainly not going to be able to do traditional broadcast TV advertising in the, multi thousands of dollars per hit. Um, you know, you get a small influencer and you start to build brand recognition and have compelling uh, advertisements on social media. It doesn't actually cost that much. Um, so I think you're right. We look for that because those companies do a few things. If they're successful in building their own brand, they're more likely to be a company that's going to be around for a long time, right? Because they have internal growth methodology. They don't need outside money necessarily. So if they can build their social media, they can build their brand recognition, they can drive customers to purchases, they're going to be profitable. And if they're profitable and they're growing organically, they're less likely to take outside money. You don't take outside money, you don't have the outside push for unreasonable growth to the point where you have to change your distribution methods and sell your company later on. So that's a huge thing. The other thing is this is a way better partnership. If you just come in my door and ask me to grow your brand, it's kind of a one-way street. But if you come to me and say, look, we would love you to carry our food and we're going to help you grow our brand by bringing new customers into your store. Now that's a more compelling story, isn't it? Because the customers are interested. They're driven into our store specifically for your brand. Now we built the relationship with the customer and it's really a much better partnership. So I would love to see some of these legacy companies that we have grown and have supported over the years that are earned a place on our shelves. Would love to see them spend some time learning, spend some money practicing, and engage the customer where they live. And we all know where they live, social media. They have to learn how to do it. They have to spend the time and money and effort to understand it and do it better. Don't have a whole lot of hope for some of the legacy companies. They just tend to be stuck in the old methodology, but they'll get there.
Yeah, usually with that question, and if it's a smaller brand of food, I usually do get that pushback of kind of like, well, Open Farm spends $100 million on advertisement every year. But I believe it was Open Farm that released that their first year in business, they only spent $20,000 on kibble, the marketing itself. And that most of that was in store, like trying to get it in store. And then the next year they up that budget to 40,000. So their second year business, they're at 40,000. And when they went social media really hard and they found out what kind of return they could get on that 40,000, and then they started turning up that dial because they knew they could turn this amount of money into 10x. So they started significantly smaller than what you see them doing today, and they had a plan. Whatever that plan was, with it starting in store, and I believe they started with a major influencer that was brand loyal. Because also when I hear reps trying to get into the influencer game, I'm like, you got to get an influencer that's loyal to your brand. You can't have an influencer that's like, here's the 5 different foods that I feed my pet. And I feed them all because they're the best. And you're like, well, which one's actually the best or whatever the case is. So that just leaves the consumer confused and not very trusting of that person anyways, which then reflects on your brand. So if they mention words like they're using influencer marketing, I highly encourage brands to get exclusivity from that influencer if it's like food specific. That influencer can go talk about any toys or treats they want because it's not within your category. But I wouldn't want somebody toting my brand along with a lower grade brand or higher grade brand that I just don't align with either, because then it just makes the influencer not look trustworthy. So I do get that pushback quite a bit, mainly if almost like you're looking at Goliath, I think, as the small manufacturers. And you're like, I can't climb that mountain. I can't spend $10 million on my marketing. But all you have to do is start with $1,000 a month and start and figure out how to reach your customers with that budget. And then once you figure out how to reach them, start turning it up, multiplying it, and turn that into money kind of thing. So since we talked about, let's see, now that we've talked about kind of how we interview companies, I want to talk about, we made the assumption that certain products meet certain criteria. Let's go over that criteria and what, at least for our store, what we're looking for when we have a product that comes in. Because last week we talked about how many different options there are, and let's just say the toys category, and a lot of them overlap. A lot of them look the same. A lot of them are literally carbon copies of a product that does well. So how do you evaluate different products, and what kind of are the checklists for you when you bring in a new product outside, let's say outside of food?
So we also talked about, again, going back to information and data, is talked about creating departments and categories within our inventory tracking system, our point of sale system, that I think is probably a lot for a lot of people. It's at least 40 separate categories. And that allows us to distinguish, let's use toys since you brought that up, is I believe we have 6 subcategories of toys. We have plush, which is your typical external soft material. We have soft plush and tough plush. Soft plush, we don't have expectations that's going to live with a tough chewer for, more than 5 or 10 minutes. Tough plush, those are the tall tails, Huggle Hound, Fluff and Tough. These are the ones that have like an internal lining that the tough chewer is still going to tear into it, but it should give them a few weeks of interest and satisfaction. Or a dog who's just a normal dog, you could have one of those for years. We have customers who come back, oh, I need the goose because the goose finally died. So tough plush, soft plush, we have rubber, we have rope and tug, We have flyer, frisbee type toss toys. We have interactive. I don't know what I'm up to, but let's say we're at like roughly 6 categories. And so those are distinctly different. We can sell hard, durable rubber, and it's not going to cannibalize it if we bring a rope toy in, or if we bring a fluff toy, a soft plush toy. When we subdivide those categories, and we have tough plush, which is the biggest offering we have because it's the fastest movers. Our customers are most interested in that category. If you bring me another tough plush toy that I think is going to be durable, that's where we have to start to decide, do we grow the department because there's enough sales there that it warrants it? Or if we were to bring something new in, do we have to kill something? Because this is where you get into cannibalization, where you bring in a toy that is just so similar that toy A was selling well and toy B is brand new, that there's not sufficient distinction that when your customers come in, now my purchasing and my selling is diluted between two brands. And if each brand has 10 SKUs, now I've got 20 SKUs to inventory instead of 10. But my customer didn't gain anything because they were so similar, and we didn't gain anything because they were so similar. So we're looking for a handful of things. In a lot of the store, one of the questions is, does it solve a distinct problem? Like, is it a problem my customer has? And like a crate is a good example. My customer has a puppy. A crate is a solution to raising a puppy who's going to have housebreaking needs and chewing problems. Obviously, crates are crates. They've been around forever. But when you have something brand new, you have to ask, is this solving a problem that my customer hopefully knows they have? That's a low education sale. They come in with a problem, you have a solution, boom, done. A high education sale is they probably don't even know that they have the problem. And then you have to kind of discuss whether or not the dog has a problem, does it fit the product? But if we go back to the toys issue, is the newest product, if it's not distinctly different, maybe is it a better value to us or to the customer? So we can get brand new fluff toy, but it's same quality, similar quality, but it's a lower price. Maybe our customers are looking for that. And we can consider that a possibility. We either have two lines, high value line, low value line, or we start to wean away from the higher, more expensive, especially if the new product maintains their high level of quality, but it's just coming in at a lower price. So that could be a solution, is kill the old product, bring in the new product, because now we've got a better solution for our customers at a better value. If it is redundant, can the category reasonably increase sales? So that would be similar, but maybe they look different. So the toy base is, for all intent and purpose, identical, but these guys have new woodland creatures that seem really compelling and interesting. And the old company didn't have something as cutesy. Like, oh, okay. There's sufficient enough difference that some customers might choose A, some customers might choose B, but there's a reason for that. So if everything else is equal, is it sufficiently different that I can put it on the shelf and the customers are going to know why it's different? They're going to make the choice based on that. Is it just better, right? We have product line A and product line B comes in and they can validate that there's a tough plush toy. It actually lasts longer. It has a new material. It's stronger. It's better, but it's not necessarily more expensive. So we're just looking for a handful of very specific reasons why it's a better value for the customer. It's same quality, but cheaper. Maybe it's a better quality than we're currently buying. It has some distinct features that either mean that it's so much better than the old product that we're going to eliminate the old product and bring in the new product, or the category was so strong that it has capacity for more sales so we can expand the offering with some other distinction, aesthetics or interest. We don't necessarily want to get into fads, but okay, if maybe it's a type of character that just gets popular for a few years, and that's okay too. But it's distinct in some capacity. That means that it's customers are going to come in, they're going to see it, they're going to be engaged with it in a way that's different than our old offering. I think one of the things that we mentioned before is bully sticks. I think when we really started to cut inventory, we probably had, I'm fairly sure we had 4 separate brands of bully sticks. And there was so much cannibalization. We're buying from 4 different companies. We're selling 4 different brands. And the the differences were very minor. One was a little bit lower than the other one in price. One was odor free, actually was big hit with the customers. Okay, so you take bully sticks are not just bully sticks, right? There's 6-inch bully sticks and 9-inch bully sticks and 12-inch bully sticks and 36-inch bully sticks. And then there's the thick bully sticks and the thin bully sticks. And then there's twists. And it's like, so when you think about redundancy, it's not like, oh, we have 4 brands of bully sticks. It's like we have 4 brands of bully sticks that have 6 SKUs. Now you're talking 24 products. If we had one company, we would be selling 6 products. If we cut it down to one company that has 6 products, our buying power is that much better and our velocity is that much faster, presuming we're not losing sales by eliminating something that the customers really want. So you just think about that. Like your inventory is not necessarily 24 times higher, but it's certainly 4 or 5 times higher than it could be. So once you begin to narrow your focus, really understand, like, again, let's say across 4 brands, if one company has the customer gravitated to it, they like the packaging or they like the odor free feature, even if it's only selling 20% better than some of the other brands, why not? I mean, all else is equal. The company's good to deal with. They have good fill rates. They have good prices. Why not? Why not kill off the other brands? Move your buying into this one brand. And this has worked so well for us because it simplifies our buying. It simplifies our offering to the customer. It's very clear. We actually do have 2 brands and we try to minimize the overlap between the 2 brands, but one is brand loyalty. It's one brand that we've had around for a very long time, has a recognizable name. The other one is a slightly newer name, but has a really compelling sort of story behind it. And the packaging is nice and the pricing is good for our customers. So like we go from 4 to 2 and our purchases with each of those has just increased. The distinction between the 2, we can create a value proposition between those for the customer so the customer understands the difference. And it's just so much easier from the customer's experience, from the employee's experience, from the buying experience, from the cash flow and product flow experience. Like it's so important to eliminate that type of redundancy. So I went off track because you were talking about buying and not elimination, but this is the same conversation. If we're going to eliminate something because of redundancy, we have to think that much harder about bringing something new, because if it's redundant, we're just going to dilute our sales. We're just going to confuse our customers. So we have to look at new products coming in the door. They have to have a compelling reason. Put it up against, if it's completely novel, hey, okay, maybe it fits in our store. We have to look at novelty as a double-edged sword too, is because novelty's good, it's new and it's different. Novelty's bad because it may be a high education sale because it's so new. We try to train our staff well. We try to give them experience with the product so that they can educate, but it doesn't matter how smart your staff is, doesn't matter how well trained they are. Most of your customers are coming in, buying their products and leaving. If they walk down an aisle and there's a brand new product that is very difficult to understand, they're probably just going to walk past it. It's just the truth. Doesn't matter how good your staff is, doesn't matter how well you train. Most of your customers are walking this door without an employee, and they're making the decisions in their mind instantaneously. Even if it's new and different and good packaging, they're like, oh, what's that? And then they look at the packaging like, I don't understand what it is. Okay, on to the next. I came in for dog food, so I'm just going to walk to the dog food aisle. Like, okay, your end cap looked beautiful, but it's a high education sale. It's so much harder to capture that customer's attention for that quick moment that they were walking past it. So I would look at buying just the same way as we looked at elimination. Why would we choose to eliminate things? Because there's redundancy, there's cannibalization, the products are not clear because they're so close together. Why would we be careful about bringing products in? Because they're so similar to something we have. And unless they're distinctly better or very easy to understand, it's something that we would have to really think about before bringing in. And again, there's just it's different with every category. Toys, treats, consumables, they tend to be just more flexible. Customers are more open to new and different and novelty because they're consumables with low threshold of decision making. Like, okay, I came in, I saw this toy, it was cute. I don't have to learn what it is. It's a squeaky toy. Oh, I used to buy brand X treats, but this one has something new in it. Okay, I'll try it. Threshold of decision making is very low. So it's easy to test and play with those things. As long as you can bring it in, you can monitor it, you can either replace something or you can kind of exit it later on if it doesn't do well. All right, that was a long way around how to determine with new products coming in the door and how to assess what your rep is bringing you. But I think I hit everything I was thinking about.
That's fine. I can summarize for you. But one of the examples that pops into my head when mainly kind of you were on the tough toys, when you were training me, the only real interactive stuffable kind of toy we had was Kong, the little red tiered Kong. It like dominated the rubber category for a very long time. And you were teaching me like how to look at products, and we'd see a bunch of different reps and they'd bring in different types of stuffable rubber things. And your response was always the same. I don't see how this is new and different from Kong. And Kong already had the brand awareness. A lot of trainers, a lot of vets know the brand. It had the background and the history that customers knew about. So like I kept seeing a lot of no's of toys that looked like Kong until Woof approached us years ago. And I think when you talk about your barriers for entry, it solved a real problem that the Kong had, which was difficult to stuff, difficult to keep it in the item. You just twist it off, put a preloaded treat in. It had a clear value. It was a very durable make, and the price was different, price point. It was ease for the customer. It was redundant in a way, but different shape. So like it's physically didn't look redundant. And it was some opinion is significantly better than what the Kong was just for ease of putting it together and everything. And then they also had the marketing coming in behind them that people were already asking us for the product before we had it. And also I had seen it in social media and everything. So I'm their ideal target audience with having a Belgian Malinois. If I'm seeing the marketing, they're doing the right thing, they're targeting the right people. So that was the first one I had a kind of clear glimpse of like, this is technically somewhat redundant, but an improvement, and it's sold like crazy now. Now everybody knows Wolf and it's everywhere, but I like that as an example of kind of I kept seeing a lot of no's in that category, and then I see the yes, and you're like, "Okay, this is clearly the answer to what we're looking for." So, it solved a real problem, had clear value to the customer, somewhat redundant, and it was significantly better. So those are kind of some of those things you kind of just talked about.
And since you're talking real examples, let me throw a few more in there that if you've been in the industry for a long time, you'll understand. And Tiff, you're new at the industry. You've heard me talk about these, but didn't see the evolution as it occurred. The most recent one, to your point, being Kong, the industry stalwart on durable rubber toys that you can stuff with treats, and Wolf brand, who also to your point is like did a really good job as social media, building an excellent product, understanding what the customer wanted and being able to deliver on it in such a way that it Kong still sells, but Wolf is definitely eating its lunch. So Benebone in the sort of boring chew toys category, Nylabone was the brand. Nylabone was the tough nylon plastic chew toy that could be given to any puppy and survive through their chewing stages. And Benebone had some compelling differences. They stepped up the packaging, so appeal to the visual aspect of the customer. They had different shapes that were easy to pick up so the dog could keep them off the ground. They had the flavors, variety of flavors versus just like so the old ham bone or peanut butter. So to your point, this is another one that was a new concept, new product, taking on a established product, essentially from the outside looking cannibalistic or looking redundant, but with enough compelling differences that were easy for staff to get behind, easy to explain, easy to understand for the customer, and enough value addition that it actually, we still sell a couple of Nylabones, but Benebone owns the category now. Now, historically, I always go back to the Vermont Chewman as a new category. And it seems silly right now in 2026 to say a soft toy was a novelty, but it was probably, as far as I understand, it was probably the first commercial, broadly available, soft fluff toy. And our reaction was, this is ridiculous. Dogs will chew it up in a minute. Because at the time, dog toys were Kong and Nylabone. Dogs chewed rawhide. A rubber ball, just a plain rubber ball, was a dog toy. And that was really before dog toys were what I would now call consumable, where a person was willing to spend at the time maybe probably $9.99, $7.99. And if the dog ate it in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, they would be surprised. They would probably be a little bit disappointed, but it was cute and it had a squeaker and it was fun. Oh yeah, the toys were also latex, so the very flexible, soft latex toy, and some vinyl toys that were also not super durable. So we looked at this as it was a gingerbread shaped, cream colored fleece toy with a squeaker in it and stuffing in it, and it changed our perception, but customers' perception of what a dog toy was. It was more interesting to have a stuffy toy for their dogs that they could soft mouth and chew and squeak around the house and eventually chew up. So the Vermont Chewman in my mind that is novelty without the need to explain, right? This is new and different in a category. It's a breakout product that was just simple. So it's just a super elegant solution to, you come in and we were resistant because it was different, but we started to bring them in and they started to sell and they sold really, really well. So that's something to keep an eye out for is like, even if you don't understand it at first, if it makes enough sense, it's worth testing. And if you spend $500 on an end cap, point of purchase display with this something new, it's not the end of the world if it doesn't sell. So if there's something truly novel, even if it's so different from the way things are that you're like, nah, this is never going to work. So FURminator is another really good product example that was really good marketing because they were building this product. They were selling it on QVC. And basically it was and again, it sounds ridiculous because now FURminator's been around for 20 years. It was a type of brush that helped shedding and was ridiculously expensive. So your average shedding brush could be $7.99, and this thing was like $40 to $60. So it's like many multiples, 5, 6 times the cost of what a customer would normally pay for a shedding brush. Now, this one took a little more education simply because of the price difference, right? People knew they had to brush their dog, but they didn't do it that often. So they just lived with shedding, right? Dog hair in the house. It was just a thing. Didn't worry about it. FURminator did an excellent job, not with external marketing, but with an internal POP display with, at the time, it was a DVD. And they give you this little tiny TV if you bought an end cap, and you could play the DVD on loop. And literally, it was just someone using a FURminator on heavy shed dogs like German Shepherds and Huskies and even Golden Retrievers and Labradors. And just like hairs literally flying off the dog. And we added to that by end capping the FURminator. And I put a huge clear plastic bag full of dog hair. So it was literally, you couldn't miss it. So it was a compelling visual display It was a brand new product that was ridiculously expensive for something else you would buy in the same category. But the DVD was the education. So the bag of hair stopped people. They looked at it. They spent a few minutes watching the DVD and they said, my dog sheds and we have very, very liberal return policy. So no problem. You want to buy the thing for $50, take it home, try it out. If you don't like it, bring it back. As soon as people tried it, they would never return it. It was such a compelling product. But this again goes back to novelty. And our concern there was price. So I saw the product. There was some marketing push through QVC. So there was some exposure to the consumer. But for me, the difficulty in the purchasing decision was, why would somebody spend $50 when they can spend $8 on a similar product? The problem was they weren't buying the $8 product because they just lived with the problem. And this was such a compelling solution. And this is where problem solution comes from, right? It's like, if it's just solves a problem that they know they have the problem, but they just haven't found a satisfactory way to deal with it. It was a done deal. We sold probably a couple $100,000 of these things in like 18 months. It was ridiculous how well they sold. So keeping our mind open, even if it doesn't fit our current model, this was way more expensive than I would expect a customer to pay for. We gave it a try and we started with a small desktop countertop POP. And then we went to an end cap display with the TV and we couldn't keep them in stock. And the last one I'll throw out there, because it was a category breaker, category developer, was Greenies. Everyone knows Mars owns Greenies now. So whatever, they're sold in Target for half the price we could buy them for. It's not the most interesting product now, but it was a runaway product because it was a brand new category that didn't really exist, not to any extent, when it was introduced. And it was a dental bone, chlorophyll in it, helped keep their teeth clean. And it was consumable that a dog could, they're paying $1 or something for a small greenie and the dog would just eat it immediately. And now you had to buy a box of them in order to keep feeding the dog greenies in order to keep their teeth clean. So it checked a bunch of boxes. So keeping your eye out for these ones that are almost like so new that we don't understand if the customer will adopt it or not. Those things that we look for are problem. The Vermont Chew-Mint is not a problem solver necessarily, but it's a novelty and an interest. The FURminator and Greenie dogs and customers knew that their dogs shedded and they didn't have a great solution. Customers had dogs that had plaque and tartar on their teeth or bad breath, but they couldn't find a good solution. FURminator entered an existing category in a completely new way. Greenies essentially built their own category and then became the premier product in it. So in all of those cases, they were so new that I was resistant to bring them on at the time. But having a little bit of like, try to step back and be objective and say, well, does it solve a problem? Is it new and different? Is it so simple that the customer just understands it and they can just pick it up and like, no? Or is there a way like the FURminator that you can educate them quickly and show them how well it will solve the problem? So if those things are there, I'm still waiting for what's the next super novel toy. Maybe the Woof is it. Maybe that'll make it like, oh, okay. You're breaking into a category that's got a few brands that have been around forever. And we don't think it's ever going to change, but they add a twist to it that solves a problem. Again, this is a long-winded way of me saying is like, we always have to keep our eye out for new products, something that might be surprising or different in a way that we don't yet understand, but we always have to be diligent and careful that we're not just adding products that are too similar to what we have, that are redundant and they're going to just cannibalize our purchasing ability. They're going to confuse the customer because we have things that are just, customer's got to ask, well, why would I choose this over this? They look the same. If that's the issue, it's probably not worth bringing on. We don't want to have that type of redundancy. At the same time, we want to be open to new things that are entering the market that we want to risk a little bit of money on, risk some shelf space on, and hope that we'll be pleasantly surprised with the customer response. So again, it's some interesting history there, and I think some people will appreciate that history. And now you've got a lesson on how the pet industry changed over the last 35 years, a variety of new products.
Yeah, a phrase that I think you used a lot while you were training me was the default answer is no to a new product unless proven otherwise. So that's kind of the mantra I live by is that it has to overcome all of these barriers, but first answer is no. And then you kind of prove your worth basically in that interview. It's funny you mentioned Greenies because I recently just interviewed a company that it is the gentleman that designed Greenies and then eventually sold it to Mars, but he rebuilt another dental product that he took all the research that we've now found out that like starch is what builds plaque on teeth. So building a dental product out of starch-based products is not necessarily ideal. So he took everything he learned from Greenies and he's made a new product, a unique, different shape that nobody else has on the market. A couple other things. It's made protein based, like compressed protein, not any kind of starchy, carby type things that are going to build plaque. And he invested in Texas A&M to actually study the product and has physical proof that it will decrease plaque and tartar on teeth. It's all things he didn't do the first time around starting the Greenies company because he probably started it like out of his garage or something, a lot lower budget than he had after selling Greenies, but his non-compete is out and he's created a new product. So it was interesting to me as something that like Greenies has controlled that department for so long, and I'm interested in it because I know he made a good enough product that Mars was interested in it, and it looks like he's correcting a lot of the mistakes and learning from all of the years of however long Greenies have existed, of what we know now in dental disease in dogs, and learn from it. So it's gonna be interesting, but I'm gonna rely on kind of our next topic with that is that the guarantee behind those new products and how we're going to train our staff on them. The nice thing about having these SOPs in place in your business about how to buy products is that it makes it very clear to your staff why you choose to bring something in, and they can then line themselves to that and help sell it for you. So a big thing that I like to ask is like, what's their training on the product? Um, for my staff members, is it online training? Is it in-person training? How much education do I have to do? And if there's a supplement company that says they do not have any training on their product, I'll be like, that's an immediate no, because there's no way my staff is going to be able to learn about your product if you can't teach them. Or a food company, anything like that. Obviously, toys and treats you need a little less training on, but you have to have that brand alignment with your employees, because if you can get your employees on board with how you purchase things, they're just gonna be brand champions. The next customer comes through your door. So I think that's very important to ask, what's in it for the employees, because we don't do in our store, we don't do any kind of spiff programs, which seems to be a selling point for a lot of brands. We don't let our because we think I think a good reason we don't do the spiff programs is because we don't want to incentivize the wrong things in our employees. So they have to have different routes between education, employee feeding, some kind of buy-in from our employees. Because if you can't get them on board as brand ambassadors, it's just not going to sell anyway, especially with the customers that we've already earned that are just looking for a food suggestion. So training, we also look at like consistency of a product too. So the ballistic category, if you can't represent or get a clean product in here that looks the same, we got to know that kind of thing. Buy-in for brands. So how much are we spending right out the gate to buy it in? So that's why that threshold for food is a lot higher because you're in the thousands range when you have to bring in a new food line, whereas toys, treats, you're in like a couple $100 range. The barrier for entry on that's a lot lower. And I think the last thing that I want to talk about, especially as the buyer, is what happens when rep pushes back on a decision. So they come in, they bring a product. I'm like, I don't think it's a good fit, and they push back. I think a good rep will challenge you and challenge the product in the right way. They'll represent it in the right way. I think bad reps will pressure you into trying to take you on product. And I think those are two different things. Challenging and pressuring, definitely two different things. Terms like, I need to sell this product for XYZ reason. You'd be doing me a favor. All kind of ick terms for me is what I'd call them. So I would say that's pressure. That's pretty much an immediate no for me. And it's not because I'm not trying to foster that relationship. I feel like they're forcing something on me that it might not be a good fit. Now, if they need to just sell something and it is a good fit for Braxton's and it works here, that's just simpatico, works out. But anytime I feel pressure from a rep, it's like going into a car salesman dealership or whatever. I'm like, let's stop. Let's pump the brakes. Why do we need to sell this bad? But a good rep will be like, I definitely see your objections to this. I have seen it do well in a store similar to yours. This is how they improved upon it and how they sold it themselves. And they kind of start working with your objections and see if they can come up with good answers to them, I feel like. And setting the expectations of like, we've had multiple conversations with legacy reps about our new buying procedures, and it fits well with some, it doesn't sit well with others. But we have to stick to the system that we're building, like what Dave said at the beginning. Otherwise, your inventory is just going to control you. The reps are going to build the store they want to build, and they have their own motives. And at the end of the day, do you have anything you want to say on that topic?
Yeah. Use the term ick. One of my issues that I would have with a rep is if they're selling by negative comparison, if they're in a competitive market with a product that might be similar and they diminish the other product. So it's okay to compare in sort of like a level playing field. The competitive brand does it this way and we do it this way. But it's really not okay to be like, I heard that they add this crap into their food and that's why it's harmful. If you have to sell through negative association with other brands, that probably means you don't have a strong enough argument for the benefits of your own brand. So comparison is good, but negative selling through diminishing your competitors is, yeah, we don't see that often, but on occasion, someone will throw a jab at a competitor. If it's a haha sort of thing, that's fine. I get it. But if it's truly their sales methodology is to tell you why the other brands suck, therefore buy mine, that's an ick for me. Fortunately, we haven't really seen that. Other than that, I agree. I think the pressure points, especially if they use sort of emotional languaging, like we've worked together for so long and it'd be really great if you could do this. Well, what are you really selling? This loyalty, it's important for us to go back and forth. Hey, I think it's super important for us as a business. We sit between the customer and the distributors or the manufacturers. It's important for us to consider the vendor relationship as much as it is important for us to consider the customer relationship. But our core purpose of being in business is to serve our customer. And we hope that we can benefit our vendors. Our core business is not to benefit our vendors. So I like the line you said about your customer, that your vendors building your store. And it's just a dangerous place to be because they're not talking to your customers every day. They don't live where you live. They don't experience the questions and the problems and pushback that your customers give. So I think that's really important way to look at it is you know your customers best. And if your vendor rep is getting pushy and not listening to what you're asking for or the direction you're trying to go, they're literally just being pushy. And yeah, used car salesman vibes, not a good place to be. So it's okay to say no. And that's why I think the default no that we talked about, that you talked about in learning that as a sort of a first thing came from the inventory freeze that we talked about last time is it's just way easier to stand your ground if you can just say no up front and have supporting reason why you're saying no. From that point, you can say, all right, well, you've overcome the first objection. You think my no is not valuable, but now you have to actually explain each particular reason. Why is it different? Why is it a better value? Why does it solve a customer problem? Oh, okay, now you're going to win me over. But you come in the door with something that is not interesting, not novel, and you say, bring this. Yeah, sorry, no. Why is it different? Well, it's not really different. Why is it a better value for the customer? Well, it's not really. Like, oh, okay. Now you're not going to be convinced that it's a worthwhile product. But I do like the default no starting point. And it's fine if people joke about it. The reps might then think you're a hard ass and kind of like, oh, well, you're going to say no. Well, that's where we're going to start. And until you convince me otherwise that this product has enough value for my customers to sit on the shelf, then it's going to stay a no. So I think it's just easier if we get in that mindset. It's like practice saying no, let them fight for the yes. If you do that, it's going to be a whole lot easier to control your own shelves, to serve your customers the way that you see best fit, while hopefully teaching your reps to then be more thoughtful and intelligent about bringing you the products that are going to be really meaningful, right? The value deals that you can pass on to the customer, the new and interesting products that they've seen work well in other similar stores. Like, oh, okay, now you're bringing value. Now we can have a few more yeses. So yeah, dealing with reps is in the beginning was very hard. Most of the reps didn't get it. And there was a lot of just plain old pushback, plain old pressure without compelling discussions or argument as to why we should change. As they learned our methodology and they realized we were sticking to our guns, they started to bring more value to engage with better products and more productive meetings when we sat down. Stick to your guns, default to no, have a good reason, and then let them win your business with a good conversation.
Yeah, the getting comfortable with no, it's challenging for sure. I know one of our training sessions, we met with one of our top brand that literally is our top selling brand, and they're top selling brand in one category, and they're expanding a different category, which in our personal store and our experience in our sales data, we knew was a shrinking category. It wasn't really growing. It's not necessarily shrinking exponentially. It's like wet dog cans. And I watched you have a conversation with somebody. I assume you have a very detailed relationship considering it's one of our best selling brands. And you're like, I wouldn't bring this can in because cans are not growing. Like we have freeze dried that's growing, air dried that's growing, different categories, alternative feeding categories. But something that I assume the rep came in with the highest intention of Braxton sells a lot of my food. This should be an easy placement. But that department for us, this our specific experience and example, it just wasn't going to be a good fit. And I don't think the rep was completely prepared for that no, but it was very interesting to watch from my perspective and have you do that. Because I was like, "Oh, well, are you serious?" Even though we sell a lot of his food, we're not gonna just bring in everything, so, yeah, that was definitely an eye opener for me. So I think we covered a lot. We've kind of covered how to define your store, how to define your customer, and having the building a filter, building an SOP around your buying so that you bring in the clear and correct products, you have staff buy-in, and pretty much anybody could pick up this document and understand what you need to buy for your store and what is a good fit. And the importance of just slowing down your buying and starting with the no first and then letting people overcome that challenge. I think these are all things that kind of work in tandem when we talk about this topic in buying that have to go together because you can't talk about building an SOP around buying if you don't know who you're trying to target or what type of store you're trying to build, and you can't start the other without the other. So I think this is all a good culmination. I know next week we're going to be talking about data, kind of going back to that topic, how to look at data, what numbers to potentially look at. So I'm very excited about that. But I think better buying decisions are actually what fixes your inventory long term. So I think it's very important to execute on the inventory freeze, on the buying SOPs, on how to analyze your data and all of these different steps so that you don't keep building a repeated process.
When you have to articulate something in writing, you have to think about it more than normal. Right? If you're just making a decision sitting with a rep, the decision is probably mostly emotional and can be very time dependent. Honestly, there are studies where judges will make different calls if it's right before lunch or right after lunch. If they're hungry and they've been working for 4 hours and they're a little bit tired, they will go to their default. So in a role type, if the decision is the default is to say no, no parole, you stay in jail. You have to have a compelling reason to parole somebody. If you don't have the mental bandwidth to make those decisions and to think about it, you're more likely to go to default. And this is why default no works for us is like, we actually want a default no. So if we're with our favorite rep, if we're hungry and tired, if for whatever reason we're just not thinking clearly, we've got so many other things going on, the store is busy, or we just lost an employee or something, and we're not clear headed, we're way more likely to be influenced if we don't have a clear, pre decided path. And that's why these SOPs are so important because not only is it something that we have in writing that we can follow and everybody can understand, but the real beauty is that we sat down and we took the time to think about it and how we would want to act consistently over time. That's really what an SOP is. And if we take the time to think about it and we have to take the time to articulate it on paper, it means that we have to have purpose and meaning behind it. And when that's the case, it just becomes so much easier when we're confused and we're distracted and we're not certain. We can just go back. We can say, well, this is the reason I made this decision. I was following this decision path and it made sense to me because I took the time to think about it. And this is where your product or this category falls into. It's no for this reason, or it's yes for this reason. I don't actually have to think about it anymore because I've already thought about it. But that's really the beauty of the pre-planning, the process, and making it into an SOP. Not only do you have something you can fall back on, you can explain it to reps more easily. You already said you can explain it to employees more easily. It really defines who you are by taking that time to think and to articulate it and put it in writing and to understand exactly why it's in writing. Doesn't mean it can't change over time. It probably should change over time, but only then with real thoughtful consideration. So, I mean, the value of that is way more than just having, oh, I've got an SOP, right? If you put it in a closet and never pay attention to it, it's useless. But if you take the time to think about it, develop it intelligently, and refer to it, it's almost invaluable. Really, really important. I'm glad you brought up those SOPs, especially in this sort of rebuilding inventory discussion, because it's going to be what guides you building the business that you want, you serving the customers in the way that you understand them. It's all going to be in there in that document.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I appreciate you joining me, Dave. If you're watching this in the classroom, I'm going to attach Braxton's SOPs just so you have a live example of kind of what we go by day on day, kind of what the document might need to be structured like. And there's no set guidelines. It's just kind of what you understand, what's specific, and what you can articulate to other people. Because Dave is a person that likes to write things for himself, and then you have to give it to AI, and that way you can explain it to anybody. So it's very important that if it's in your own words, it's your own writing. It just has to be clear so somebody else can read it and execute on it for you. So we'll see you next Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks.